There's a code written into the fabric of history, a seven-stage sequence that has unerringly destroyed every great empire for the last 5 centuries. Spain, Britain, the Soviet Union. They all followed it to their ruin, convinced they were different. Today, I can prove to you that the United States has already completed 5 of those 7 stages. We are not approaching the crisis, we are in it. This isn't a political warning, it's a mathematical reality. And the collapse doesn't start with war, it starts silently, from within. Stick with me, and I'll show you the proof.
History teaches us one brutal lesson. No empire is forever. But it also shows us that they don't just fade away, they collapse. And they collapse in a predictable 7-stage sequence. It begins not with invading armies, but with economic exhaustion. It starts with military overextension, followed by currency debasement, a crippling debt spiral, the loss of manufacturing, and deep social decay. We've seen it with the Spanish Empire, whose greed for gold ultimately destroyed it. We've seen it with the British Empire, whose global dominance evaporated in a single generation. And we've seen it with the Soviet Union, which went from a nuclear juggernaut to non-existent in less than 900 days. 3 empires, 3 complete collapses, all following the same script. Today, we're going to hold up a mirror to the United States and see just how far down this path we've already traveled. The reflection is not just alarming, it's a 5-alarm fire. Let's begin with the first superpower to rule the world, Spain. In the 16th century, Spain was drowning in silver and gold. After conquering the Americas, they controlled the world's money supply. Their armies were unbeatable, their currency the global standard. They were the undisputed masters of the world. But this immense wealth became their curse. Their first mistake, military overextension. King Philip II waged wars on 4 continents simultaneously. From the Mediterranean to the Netherlands, his ambition knew no bounds. But his treasury did. The cost of maintaining a global war machine was staggering, consuming over half of the kingdom's entire revenue. To pay for it all, they made their second fatal error, currency debasement. They began mixing cheap copper into their pure silver coins. At first, it was a small amount, then more and more, until their currency was virtually worthless. Inflation exploded. People lost faith in their own money. This led directly to the third stage, a debt spiral. Spain borrowed relentlessly from foreign bankers, falling into a trap where they had to take out new loans just to pay the interest on the old ones. In 40 years, the Crown declared bankruptcy 4 separate times. But the most insidious stage was the 4th one, the loss of productive capacity. With so much easy money flowing in, why would anyone work? Why build ships when you can buy them? Why innovate when you can import? Spain's manufacturing withered. Its agriculture stagnated. All that silver and gold flowed into Spain and straight back out again to pay for goods from more productive nations. Spain became a golden pipeline, not a factory. Finally came social decay. The economy was in shambles. Crime soared. The best and brightest minds fled the country for opportunities elsewhere. What was left was a hollow shell, a society of bureaucrats and soldiers with no one left to create wealth. Within a century, the world's richest empire was a broke, second-rate power. It never recovered. Now, fast forward 300 years to the British Empire. In 1914, 1/4 of the world's population lived under the British flag. The pound sterling was the undisputed global reserve currency. London was the financial capital of the planet. Like Spain, they believed their dominance was permanent. But World War I changed everything. The war forced Britain into military overextension on an unprecedented scale, and it led directly to a crushing debt spiral. To fund the war, Britain borrowed astronomical sums, mostly from the United States. In just 4 years, they went from being the world's biggest creditor to its biggest debtor. After the war, their gold reserves were depleted, but they committed the fatal error of currency debasement in a different way. To project strength, they put the pound back on the gold standard at its old inflated value. This crippled their economy. British goods became too expensive, factories closed, and unemployment skyrocketed. In 1931, the pound collapsed, losing a quarter of its value overnight. The world's reserve currency had failed. The Second World War sealed their fate. Britain emerged victorious, but bankrupt. They couldn't afford their empire anymore. This was stage 4, loss of empire. In 1947, they gave up India, the crown jewel. Over the next 2 decades, the rest of the empire dissolved. This was followed by the final stage of the currency's decline. The pound continued its slow, painful fall from over $4 to, at one point, near parity. The superpower had become America's junior partner, a museum of its former glory. Our most recent and terrifying example is the Soviet Union. After World War II, they were a nuclear titan, an industrial powerhouse that challenged America across the globe. They were convinced that communism was the wave of the future. Their first mistake was a crippling military overextension. To keep up with the U.S. arms race, they spent an unsustainable 20% of their entire GDP on their military. Their command economy, however, was a disaster. This led to stage 2, economic stagnation. It couldn't innovate. It couldn't produce quality goods. By the 1980s, a nation with some of the most fertile farmland on Earth couldn't even feed its own people and had to import grain. The system was broken. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. This was their loss of the empire. Eastern Europe broke free. And just 900 days later, the Soviet Union itself ceased to exist. No invasion, no war, just a sudden, catastrophic economic implosion. So now, let's turn that mirror on ourselves. Where does America stand in this 7-stage cycle of collapse?
Stage 1. Military overextension? Check. With over 750 military bases in 80 countries and a defense budget larger than the next 10 countries combined, we are stretched thinner than ever before. Stage 2. Currency debasement? Check. Since leaving the gold standard in 1971, the US dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power. We've printed trillions of dollars out of thin air, especially since 2020, unleashing historic inflation. Stage 3, the debt spiral? Check. Our national debt has surpassed $36 trillion. We are now spending more on interest payments than on our national defense. We are borrowing money just to pay the interest on the money we've already borrowed. This is the definition of a death spiral. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity? Check. Our manufacturing base has been hollowed out and shipped overseas. We have an $800 billion trade deficit every year. We are a nation of consumers, not producers, dependent on foreign supply chains for everything from medicine to microchips. Stage 5, social decay? Check. Look around. Political polarization that has torn the country in two. A crisis of trust in every major institution. Rising crime, homelessness, and a drug epidemic that kills over 100,000 Americans a year. We have completed 5 of the 7 stages. 5!
History shows what comes next. Stage 6 is the loss of the dollar's reserve currency status, and it's already beginning. Nations like China, Russia, and the BRICS alliance are actively creating alternatives to the dollar. Central banks are buying gold at record rates. When the world no longer needs our dollars for trade, those trillions of dollars we've printed will come flooding back home, and the resulting economic tsunami will be unlike anything we have ever seen. Which brings us to the final, terrifying stage. Stage 7. Collapse. This isn't a slow decline. History shows it is a sudden, rapid implosion. A currency crisis triggers a debt crisis, which triggers a political crisis. The system breaks. We tell ourselves it can't happen here. We're America. We're exceptional. But so did the Spanish. So did the British. So did the Soviets. The laws of economics are like the laws of physics. They are unforgiving, and they apply to everyone, with no exceptions. We are not at the end of the road yet, but we are accelerating towards it. The sequence is locked in. The only question left is the timing. Perhaps there is still a chance to change course, to reform, to rebuild, to do what no other empire before us has done. But that requires acknowledging the brutal truth of where we are. History doesn't whisper its warnings. It screams at them. The only question is, are we listening?